We ring this bell as we make this time and place sacred by our presence and our intention. As we settle in and prepare for this morning's service, let's train our thoughts on the ideal that justice will come someday. Good morning and welcome to Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Prescott, Arizona. I'm Bobby Bollinger and I'm pleased to be your worship associate this morning. Our minister, Reverend Patty Willis, is on study leave during the month of July and will return to our pulpit in August. We extend a warm welcome to all of you and are really glad that you chose to be with us this morning. We hope that in this time of pandemic, that you are in good health, both physically and emotionally. Despite our social distance, we do want to stay connected. So please consider joining us for the breakout rooms following the service. This will give us a chance to chat with fellow congregants in small groups and with our guest speaker, Janine Gelsinger. We invite any first-time visitors who would like more information about our congregation to go to our website, which is prescottuu.org. This is the mission statement of our congregation. We are a compassionate spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. We extend our thanks to those who have made this service possible this morning. First of all, to Heather Knowles for her superb technical expertise in putting it all together for us. A tip of the hat also to Reverend Matthew Crary from the Borderlands UU congregation in Amado, Arizona. And a big welcome to Janine Gelsinger, the Executive Director of UUJAZ, the Unitarian Universalist Justice in Arizona Network. Besides her work with UUJAZ, Janine serves the UUA on the Joint Ethics Steering Committee and, among other things, is working with numerous statewide justice organizations to win civilian oversight of the Phoenix Police Department. Although we are physically apart, we are still in community, and we continue with some of our meetings and activities by way of the internet. Please check our weekly peek and our website. Remember, that's prescottuu.org. as well as today's order of service for announcements. Reverend Patty's videos will resume in August. A couple of announcements pertinent right now: the children's faith development for both children and the youth will be today at 11:30. Contact Bev Bostrom if you have any questions. And this Wednesday at 10 o'clock, the subject of the Wednesday morning forum will be defunding the police, a discussion that will be facilitated by today's speaker, Janine Gelsinger. See today's order of service for Zoom login information. The flame of our chalice is a symbol of the warmth and brightness of our connections. Its flame is the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, and the fire of justice. Its fire is the divine glow of love burning deep within the human heart. We light this chalice, a symbol of our heritage, in much gratitude for this beloved community. Today's service will explore the possibility of how we can live and make a difference during this time of pandemic. Let's hear from Janine Gelsinger on how we might begin that journey.
In our opening words today from Laura Eberly, I want to invite with you to imagine the possibilities in pandemic, to imagine the new world that this moment holds. This poem is called The First Week. If we all agreed to, on Monday, we could plant a pollinator garden on every corner and turn over one parking spot per block to vegetables and fruit. But first, on Sunday, we should assemble all the healers, all the yogis and chiropractors, sangomas and sage smudgers, and ask them to have coffee with the matriarchs and the refugees and the trans sex workers and the small town queers and anybody who is yelled at a marble building through a bullhorn or raised a child in times of war. And by lunchtime, all of us would learn to locate, heal, and fortify our spines. That evening, the musicians would find our diaphragms and teach us new songs to sing while planting. On Tuesday, after the gardens, we would repair every roof, install rain barrels and solar panels, retrieve the lost balls and frisbees and kites, and remember, we are tiny beneath the sky. On Wednesday, we'd fix the heaters so the gas could never be cut off, and install a tiny lead filter in every faucet. By Thursday, we would know each other's names and begin to tell our stories. And then the farmers and the roofers and the plumbers would be honored by the lawyers and the doctors who had spent their first week ever listening. Next, venerations and reparations by the bankers and professors who will learn that education isn't learning, and money isn't value, and nothing is the feel of soil in your hands or throwing back your head to sing. We will ache for love and owning nothing, and for the first time, that will make us unafraid. By Friday, we will be too busy healing, tending, and child rearing for waging war. So, the soldiers will have no orders, the police will have quiet radios and no calls, so we will tear apart the prisons and send the guards to rehab, where first graders and nursery workers will teach them, slowly, to trust humanity again, beginning with their own. We will use the bricks and fences to build community centers with wide porches where the grannies can knit and keep watch instead. Saturday would be for rest. Hammocks, creeks, and lemonade. We would listen to the earth and the spirits and our ancestors, our lovers and our beloveds, and the bullfrogs and the songbirds and the tall grass and the redwoods and the oak trees for one day every week, breathing. And by next Sunday, we would know who else we need.
Wow, what beautiful thoughts. Thank you, Janine. And now please join in singing our opening hymn, Morning Has Come. The words will be on your screen. Please join me in reciting our covenant. The words will be on your screen. Love is the doctrine of this congregation, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together. We take time this morning to acknowledge that over the last 4 months, our lives have been radically changed by the current pandemic. This is a time that has been easier for some than for others. As a beloved community, may we hold one another in our hearts and acknowledge the difficulties, losses, and sorrows being experienced by some. Let's remember the importance of human connection and the support that we can offer one another, even if it's just through a card, a call, an email, or a distanced hello. It is difficult to live with the uncertainty of tomorrow, but perhaps we can be inspired by the words of Albert Camus, who mused, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that there was within me an invincible summer." May your own invincible summers help you through the days ahead. Please join me, unfortunately without musical accompaniment, in singing Walking with You. Walking, walking with you, walking with you is our prayer. Now is the time when we normally have our offering, and in these distance times, our love for this community and our spirit of generosity remain. Our gifts lift up and enable this self-supporting congregation to conduct its many ministries. Additionally, we extend a hand to the greater community through our monthly Seeds of Support program. During the month of July, our recipient is the Coalition for Compassion and Justice. You will find information about them in our order of service. You may donate to the congregation or to CCJ by sending a check or going online to prescottuu.org. On the bottom left-hand side of the screen, click the word Donate to contribute and designate where you want your contribution to go. This link is also available in the chat on this video. Your gifts to this congregation are most gratefully received. Blessed be. Our offertory music this morning harkens back to 1985, when, in response to the 1983-85 famine in Africa, where around 1 million people died of starvation, celebrities gathered to sing and raise funds to help the populations affected. Think of this as you listen to this song that reminds us collectively that when motivated, we can do astonishing things to effect positive changes in our world. I'd like to tell you that that was the Granite Creek Choir. Anyhow, that really brings back a lot of memories for a lot of us. Let's switch gears a little bit now and go virtually to Amado, Arizona, and listen to Matthew Crary, who shares some thoughts about maps in his reading, Paper Town.
Sorry, I got distracted exploring this map. I've been studying maps in order to get reoriented, because that's what maps can do, right? They can help us locate where we are. My church is here in Amado, and this map informs me that I have to travel north to get to Tucson, and then east, and then further south to get to Sierra Vista. But there's another thing that maps can do, right? They can help us imagine where we want to go and make it possible for us to get there. You know, that reminds me of a true story. It concerns a space on a map that never was. That is, until someone imagined that it could be, and through the possibility of imagination, it became real. It's the true story of a paper town. You are traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of one's fears and the summit of one's knowledge. You are now traveling through a dimension of imagination into the twilight zone. No, that's no good. With all respect to Jordan Peele and to Rod Serling, who was a UU, it feels too much like we're already living in the Twilight Zone today. Now, back in 1937, this map was made with the General Drafting Company by Ernest G. Alpers and Otto Lindbergh. The map has become very well known among cartographers because, well, of this tiny town, Agloe, New York. The map is so well known because, you see, in 1937 and in all the years leading up to it, there never was a town called Agloe there. In fact, there was nothing in that space but the intersection of two dirt roads. It's an old cartographer trick to add an imaginary town to the maps that you made so that you can tell when someone else copies your work. Agloe came out of Ernest and Otto's imagination as a good spot for what they called a paper town, a town that only exists on a map. And they used the letters of their own names to come up with Agloe. But that's not the end of the story. You see, because Ernest and Otto imagined it and put their paper town on a map, people began to visit Agloe. Though it was only a dirt crossroad, it was enough to inspire someone to eventually live there. And sometime in the 1950s, Agloe started to become a real place. For over 40 years, it slowly grew. In its heyday, it had a general store, a gas station, and a couple of houses. Now, sadly, Agloe doesn't exist any longer. The businesses, they shut down, and the people have moved away. It doesn't appear on maps either. And so it isn't quite the paper town that it used to be. But this, too, isn't the end of the story. See, Agloe still exists as a setting in author John Green's book, Paper Towns. Green has said that he finds the metaphor of Agloe irresistible. In a TEDx talk from 2016, he said, "It's easy enough to say the world shapes our maps, right? The overall shape of the world is obviously going to affect our maps. But what I find more interesting is the manner in which we map the world changes the world. The world is changed by our maps of it." And so he concludes, "I believe that what we map changes the life we lead. Maps don't show you where you will go in your life, they show you where you might go. You very rarely go to a place that isn't on your personal map." Imagine that. Maps don't just represent the places we already are. We can make maps of places that have never been and then find the ways to go there. We travel by maps, not only of places we know in sight and sound, but also that we create with our minds. And there's fertile ground right there between light and shadow, science and superstition, between fear and knowledge. Navigating by a map that's crafted both by our current reality and what we can envision just might bring us into that zone where we can map out our tomorrows. And that's the meaning that the paper town Agloe, New York holds for me today. There are still possibilities to imagine and create even within this pandemic. Maybe even more so now. We are struggling with the physical realities of our health and our economy in our society. And so it reminds me of what the Reverend Richard S. Gilbert wrote. We are, therefore, we love. Cosmic bits of mass and energy come to life together. We love, therefore we are. May we be humble before the wonder of what we dare to create.
Thank you, Matthew, for pointing out the concept that maps don't just show us where we have been, but help us imagine where we can go. Imagine the possibilities. To expand on these thoughts, Janine will now take us a bit farther on this journey.
I want to invite you for a moment to imagine with me. And I know it's hard. I know that there's so many thoughts in our heads about what this pandemic could mean. But I want to invite you in a moment of imagining the possibility that exists in this moment to change the world, to live into the kind of world that we've been dreaming of. You can start by imagining with me a meeting that I was in a few weeks ago. UUJAZ is part of a coalition of a dozen or so organizations on the Phoenix Civilian Oversight Coalition. We are in the company of Puente Human Rights Movement, of Poder in Action, of Black Lives Phoenix Metro, of Black Phoenix Organizing Collective, Equality Arizona, and so many groups that are working together to make our world better, and specifically to put civilian oversight in charge of the Phoenix Police Department. It's the largest police department in the country without it. And so we've been working on this for almost a year now as a coalition, and we won our battle. And so a few weeks ago, we were in a meeting deciding where to go from here. And it was hard. We were all kind of stuck. And then we realized that in the last weekend, Phoenix police arrests an average of 300 people every weekend. And that last weekend, they had only made 36 arrests. That means they were citing and releasing folks on the spot to avoid putting them in jail because of the infection possibility of being in jail with the coronavirus and how quickly that would spread. And we were thinking, we have to completely recalibrate our goals, because our goal for the last 6 months, for a year, had just been put in place this little stopgap. If we could get civilian oversight of the Phoenix PD, that was, at that point, the goalpost, the best we could do. But now, in this moment, we have the possibility to say that we don't actually need to arrest anyone and put them in jail. We can effectively end the bail system, because we don't need people to sit in jail before they've been convicted of any crime. We can let them go and they will return to court. Studies show that the bail process isn't effective in having people return. It's, in fact, equally as effective as sending them a text message reminder of their court date. And this wasn't possible just a month ago, but now the Phoenix Police implemented it without even having to push for it. As an organizer, this is a game changer. We've joined our comrades in Ohio, in California, in Boston, in New York, in pushing for the release of folks in detention centers and prisons because of the COVID-19 outbreak. Now, we believe they never should have been there in the first place. In La Palma Detention Center here in Arizona, 93% of detainees have not been convicted of any crime. That means that they are in detention just for seeking asylum and waiting for their court date, waiting sometimes 6 months, 8 months, a year, without visitors, without having committed any crime. And we know that in this pandemic, the detention centers are tinder boxes, waiting for a spark, waiting to explode. We know we need to get them out. And in this moment, we can imagine that for the first time, that's a possibility. We have the possibility of making that happen by working to pressure our governor and the head of detention in Arizona to make this a reality. So I want you to imagine with me the possibilities. I organize with Sunrise Movement here in Phoenix and also in Southern Arizona and in Flagstaff. And Sunrise Movement have been pushing for cities to declare a state of climate emergency. And we had a protest lined up, a climate strike for the end of March. And it got canceled because effectively we are in one large climate strike. The possibility of this happening was something we were pushing for, but we didn't even believe that it was possible. We were asking the mayors and our legislators to declare a state of emergency, to do something about our climate. And they would say things like, what, are we just gonna ask people to stop driving their cars? And then look what happened. Look what we did. And on this week of the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, do you see what the sky looks like over your city? Can you breathe how clean the air is? I personally haven't filled my gas tank all month. Now, I drive a lot for my job, as you know, traveling around the state visiting you all for UUJAZ. But because of our embrace of technology, because you all were able to go the extra mile and learn how to use Zoom, here I am today, having driven 0 miles, but I'm visiting you. And that's because you did the work of embracing technology. Think about what this could be like when it's over. When this so-called pandemic ends, are we gonna go back to the way things were before? What if we kept some of these lessons we learned? What if we realized that we don't have to fly people, a dozen or so people from all corners of the country to meet in person every year for a meeting? We could do it on Zoom. And these are little things, but what if we also recognized that with all of the people losing their jobs right now, this is the moment, this is the time to push for a Green New Deal, to push for investments in green energy and jobs so that our green efforts and our economic justice efforts are linked together in that plan called a Green New Deal. This is the moment for that possibility to happen. And in the meantime, since I've been staying at home and working from home, I'm noticing what's happening in my neighborhood. Are you? It's been transforming. I live in an apartment complex, and so I organized a mutual aid pod here among all my neighbors. We use a Facebook group to communicate, and when someone's going to the store, other people can ask for things. And it's been amazing getting to know my neighbors that I've lived next to for a while and only really waved on my way to the car. You know, one of the reasons that I've been lucky enough to notice these changes in my neighborhood is because I can work from home. I'm lucky enough to do this job from home so that I can take care of my kids who are out of school during the day and get some email hours in at night. And I've been listening to the disability community, to some of my dear friends who are leaders in disability rights, who have been saying that they've been denied the ability to work from home for years and years and years. And now, with this pandemic, we've been forced to recognize that many jobs can have that accommodation. Many jobs can be done from home. And it opens up so many possibilities to those of us with disabilities who have amazing talents and gifts to share if they're given the reasonable accommodations. And look at the accommodations we're capable of making. How many of us are doing a job from home and doing a pretty great job considering that the childcare that we count on doesn't exist. And there's other things too. Universal basic income was a concept we talked about a little bit last year in the debates, but it seemed pretty out there. And just a few weeks ago, the government issued stimulus checks to everyone. And we've done that before. Universal health care has been a topic we pushed for and pushed for and pushed for. But now we're seeing even insurance companies saying that they'll cover free testing and treatment for this pandemic. We know that these things are possible. I'm part of a group in Phoenix that's organizing to halt evictions, and we had a massive action planned for May. We were going to stop evictions from happening because over 60,000 people were evicted in Maricopa County last year. And those are people that in many circumstances just needed one more week to get enough together to pay their rent. And so we were organizing to create a group of lawyers and representatives that will create a tenants court in Phoenix, like many other cities have, to be able to help people go through this evictions process and remain in their homes if at all possible. And we had to cancel our action because the mayor of Phoenix already put a halt to all evictions for the next few months. And so we've had to switch gears and push for rent forgiveness, which is something that we never thought we would be able to do. And in this moment, it seems possible. When we think about the UU the Vote effort, we've had a massive shift in what we're looking to do. It looks like it will be possible for us to have everyone issued paper ballots, to go to a completely vote from home mail-in system, to effectively end voter suppression, because we know that folks who have the hardest time getting to the polls are folks that work non-traditional hours, who hold more than one job, who are experiencing poverty. And if we can eliminate the requirement to wait in line for hours at the polls, then we can really reduce the voter suppression and give everyone the right to vote that they are supposed to have, that they've been guaranteed by our Constitution. This paper ballot movement won't happen without our voices, but now we can imagine this possibility and we can take this moment to push. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, talking to you all, that for some of us that hold privilege, this seems like a completely different moment. But for Black and brown members of our communities, for queer and trans folks, there's always been a danger when stepping outside their doors that they could face death. It's a different world for folks that don't hold some of the privilege that white folks do, that people who have straight privilege do. And we know that there is a healthcare disparity. The maternal mortality rate for Black women is 3 times what it is for white women in this country. And so for some of us, this is all new, this fear, but for some of us, this is just another day, because there's always been fear stepping outside our doors. And we have to acknowledge that in this moment, when we push for change, that we are leveraging our privilege, those of us who have it, leveraging that to make it a more equal, more just world for everyone. I had a moment at the beginning of this crisis where I was listening to Governor Newsom of California, and he was saying that the 108,000 people experiencing homeless in California were going to be found homes in the next few weeks, because otherwise it would become a massive public health crisis. Someone living on the street is not able to shelter in place. And yes, this is a good and important effort, but part of me was so angry because why was this acceptable before? 108,000 people experiencing homelessness. It shouldn't be acceptable. It should never have been acceptable. But this is the moment where we question the world we lived in, and we get to choose what world we go back to. And I'm not going back. One of my favorite memes going around right now says, if we get this right, we will never go back to normal. If we get this right, we will never go back to normal. And I want to invite you to imagine with me, what could that mean? What could the new world we go back to look like? What if it reflected our UU values? And what can we do in this moment to make that so? Can you pick up the phone and call your legislators Ask them to go back to work and to pass an initiative for paper ballots? Can you ask them to allow all of the ballot initiatives to collect signatures online? Can you sign the petition from Mass Liberation and others in our coalition to free the immigrants that are sitting in detention centers? This is a moment where we get to imagine together what this world looks like. And I know that it can be the type of world that UUs have envisioned all along.
Thank you, Janine, for your thoughtful message. By following your guidelines, perhaps we could create the wonderful world that Louis Armstrong sings about. So let's join our closing song and sing along with Louis. The words will be on your screen. And with that, Janine will offer our closing words today.
Our closing words today are by my colleague and comrade, Reverend Ashley Horan, who works for Side with Love for the UUA. Another world is possible. We say it again and again, even when the proof lies somewhere beyond the horizon, beyond our reach, beyond our imagination. This is our faith. Another world is possible. Not somewhere else, another world, another lifetime, but here and now, for us and for all. Another world is possible. There's no single path toward that world, no one strategy or approach that will restore balance, heal brokenness, sow wholeness, free creation. There are many routes towards liberation, towards freedom, but the abundance of options does not absolve us of the responsibility of acting. Another world is possible. The call, the duty of each moment in history is to discern. Who are we, and what can we bring with humility, integrity, and faith? What is the context, and how can we address it with agility, resilience, and skill? What is the vision, and how can we realize it with accountability, relationship, and joy? Another world is possible in this time of despair, of fear, of collapse. This time that is both like every other era and like no other time in history. It is audacious to declare our faith and to commit our work to a world that is more free, more just, more whole. But we are an audacious people, and we're in good company with many kin, and we are ready to show up and to work hard and to stay humble and make friends and hold the vision, starting here, now, today, with us, and persevering however long it takes until that other world is not only possible, but another world is here.
Thanks, Janine. I love that we are an audacious people. Please join me with the words on our screen as we extinguish our chalice for this morning. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. You're now welcome to take as much time as you wish to be with friends and visitors in our chat room by accepting a chat room invitation.